Hello, everyone. Curtis here. Sorry for a little bit of a delay there. We are waiting on Luke because I was the late one, so I'll take 100% of the blame for that. But we did want to go ahead and welcome you to kind of a special live broadcast, and that is the 1 year anniversary of us launching the Kickstarter. So, for those of you that might have been with us at the very beginning, there's Luke. Hey, buddy.
What's
All
going
right,
on?
we are live. I already took the blame. It was my fault. I was the late one. Um,
That's all right. We won't hold it against you.
I appreciate it. No,
Hmm.
saying was this kind of a special live stream in that we are kind of commemorating 1 year of launching the Kickstarter. Uh,
Yeah,
it's kind of wild, honestly. Uh,
yeah,
because I mean, Luke and I kind of had started working on this probably as early as last July. In terms of like, how are we going to do it, and starting to order equipment and like starting to figure things out. But we really, I don't know if we weren't even really sure if we could do it unless we had a certain amount of support. So that's kind of the other aspect of the Kickstarter is like, do people even give a shit?
yeah. That's true, man. I mean, it's been a quick year, and I feel like we've gotten some good work done. But yeah, I think at the very beginning, the big takeaway was how many folks were actually willing to get behind the bullshit that we were willing to put out there.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, we launched. I think we even launched the Facebook page a couple days from now. Like we didn't even have a Facebook page at this point. We just, I
Yeah,
guess, naively thought we didn't need social media to do something like this, and we were wrong. You definitely need that. There's Miguel Perez says, "What's up, Luke?" I guess fuck me. So I mean, whatever. It's cool.
what up, Miggy?
um, I will say that one thing we really wanted to do today was give people an opportunity to come on and chat with us for a little bit if you'd like to. Or I'll throw our email address up as a banner. So if you'd like to join us, just send us an email. I'll send you the link. You can hop on and say hello. If you're an asshole, we'll kick you off. So that's kind of our only rule is uh, whatever. Start your own podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's been a year. I feel like it's been a very strange year on a personal level for me. So to have the podcast be there as kind of like the undercurrent, it's been pretty nice, man. It's been good.
yeah, it's definitely not something that I ever personally envisioned for myself.
Same.
Um, and it's especially kind of weird how it just kind of developed into this thing that we didn't really plan on, but became this kind of all-consuming aspect of our lives for the past year. Um, and what I wanted to do before we went too much further is I actually wanted to play the Miguel says, "What's up, Curtis? Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you." I wanted to play the original intro clip, like our Kickstarter,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, promo. And I think this is it. If it's not, we're going to be embarrassed here, but 99% sure this is the one that we dropped. Uh, I mean, it's from a year ago today, so it's
Yeah.
got to
I
be
would think
it.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So it's uploading right now. So I'll give that a second, and then we'll give it a go. But again, if you're watching, just drop something in the comments if you'd like to come on. We'll bring you on. We're not gonna do long guest segments, but I'd like to see everybody. Anybody who wants to say hi, you are definitely welcome to do so.
Mhm.
A couple things I wanted to talk about today was I wanted to give everyone kind of an overview of what the podcast has accomplished in the last year, just in terms of like statistics and stuff like that, but also more of the non-quantifiable aspects that we've managed to accomplish and the stuff that it means to us. But uh,
Absolutely.
definitely a preview of what we're going to be up to in the future. And then Luke, what kind of things did you want to talk about today?
Well, yeah, I think those are good. Those are definitely good places to start. And then I thought maybe on the back end we could kind of ruminate a little bit about what the podcast has kind of come to mean to us and what the future might look like.
Yeah, and anybody who would like to do the same, feel free to join us. But it is uploaded now, so I'm going to go ahead and show this is what started it all. Hey everyone, my name is Curtis Grace.
And I'm Luke Coffey.
We are the creators and hosts of the Panjwai Podcast, an interview-based podcast series focused on the experiences of combat veterans in the Panjwai district of Afghanistan.
Curtis and I served together in 2012 at Combat Outpost Sperwangar in Panjwai. After moving on from the Army and letting a few years pass, we felt it was finally time to create an account of these experiences. We toyed with the idea of a book for a few years now, but never really had the time to spend on it until recently.
What we realized as we started compiling notes and writing samples was that while we remembered a few events really well, we didn't have the full story and there was a lot we had forgotten. The more we talked, the more we began to remember those details.
We also realized that we needed to talk to more people and gather more perspectives to tell the story properly. That quickly evolved into the decision to record the interviews. Then we came up with the idea of publishing them as a podcast, which we both felt is a more engaging platform.
While we absolutely still plan to write the book, the medium of a podcast allows the two projects to achieve separate but related goals. While the book, Patrolling Panjwai, Journal of an Infantry Company at War, will explore thematic elements related to warfare and tie it to our experiences in 2012, the Panjwai podcast offers us the opportunity to explore many more stories and viewpoints, and in turn enhance the stories we tell in the book.
Between our own recollections and the insights of our guest, the podcast allows us to explore these themes in a more personal and involved way. Our goal is to present an earnest and complete representation of our experience at Sperwangar and in Panjwai at large. We want to build a narrative that is well informed and allows the space for a serious conversation.
To do that, we are going to rely heavily on the experiences of those who were there. We intend to bring guests onto the podcast from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, such as EOD, military working dog teams, pilots, higher commanders, and other enabling forces. While our initial focus is on that 2012 deployment to Sperwangar, we plan to talk to veterans from all eras of combat in Panjwai.
Alongside these other perspectives, we hope to present a more grounded and thoughtful narrative on courage, fear, resilience, and other characteristics of military service.
We will also have the opportunity to recognize the actions of soldiers and leaders who did incredible things, and make sure the memories of those we lost are not forgotten.
We are not here to tell war stories or glorify ourselves. We have no political angle or bias. Our only ambition is to provide an authentic and human retelling of our story and the stories of others who saw combat in Panjwai.
To do this, we need your help. The veterans of Sperwangar and Panjwai are spread all over the world, and in the era of COVID-19, that means most of our interviews have to be remote.
We're not asking for much, but we do need your help to make the Panjwai podcast happen. We decided that if we're going to do a podcast, we wanted to do it right, and that means a good quality production. That also means that we needed equipment and services that neither of us have. So, to avoid a large personal cost, we're asking for small donations and looking for sponsorship opportunities to raise our goal of $1,500.
We need all the equipment to make a quality podcast, but we also need to be able to ship a podcast in a box to our guests so they can join in the discussion without sacrificing quality.
Any amount helps, and we have set up a Kickstarter to collect funds responsibly and conveniently.
We're really excited to create this, and we think our fellow veterans and you will be as well. If you could, please take the time to check out the website and the Kickstarter. The links are in the description below. If you're not comfortable making an online donation via Kickstarter, feel free to contact us via email and we can arrange for an offline donation. Thank you for taking the time to check out our project, and thank you for helping us make this vision a reality. Man, some things have changed. None of those are our social media tags anymore. That's not our website anymore. We are still writing the book, but that's not the title of the book anymore.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. I hadn't watched that video in quite a while. It was actually kind of a risk. I wasn't 100% sure that was the video, but I thought it was. Cheers.
No, that was definitely it. Yeah, cheers to that. Cheers to a year.
The one, our pledge to make sure we told all the stories, and we've told most of them. But we definitely still owe Sergeant Swindle the honor of telling his story in completion.
Yeah,
so that's going to be a priority for us for season 3. So that is a promise, and other than some other things that were in there, like the website just being wrong, I think we've lived up to most of our promises in the past year.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's no lie on us as to how that's happened. The reason we've been able to pull through on that is because so many people have come to us and reached out and agreed, or we reached out to them and they've agreed to just come on and like really fulfill everything out, man. Like I'm surprised about the volume of folks who really want to be involved in some way, capacity, or form. So that's been really cool to get those stories out there and to get them told, because I don't know, I never, at the beginning of this thing, I never would have thought that it would have been the as robust as it has been in terms of the variety of folks that have come on, which has been cool.
Yeah, I mean, and when we made that video, we didn't say it explicitly, but the plan at that time was just to talk about our deployment.
Mm-hmm.
We were really just going to narrowly focus in on Sperwangar 2012, Panjwai. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that video, and help from people like Sean Johnson over at Panjwai Valley Gun Club, and some other folks that were really generous in kind of sharing the project. We realized that the interest was far, far beyond that, and that it very quickly we're like, hey, we kind of like to tell other stories. And by the time we're in the middle of season 1, we're like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's start telling some other stories.
Yeah. I mean, we've had dudes from different eras in Panjwai, but different armies. We've had the Canadians reach out. We've had 2 Canadian guests at this point. Maybe we'll have a couple more down the road, but it's been interesting to see how this place has connected so many people in spite of their time spent there, whether it was 2006 or 2012. It's a baseline of connection that's been pretty astounding, and that's something that's been really revealing to the power of Panjwai in a way, and that the folks who have reached out and the folks who have been tracking have come from a wide variety of different places. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see that, because it speaks to the formative aspect of that place in terms of people's lives.
And I'll be the first to admit that I didn't think we would ever have the difficulty of having to choose who to talk to. I
Mhm.
mean, there are so many more people that would like to be on than we could ever possibly have on.
Yeah.
And to me, that sucks. I would love to have more people on. I hope that we can continue to use the live broadcast as a way to get more people onto the podcast. And I'd be happy to walk everyone through the process of how we make these episodes. So that's actually a great place to start.
There you go.
And why how much time and effort it takes to make one, and that's why we just can't do every single story out there.
Mhm.
It kind of starts with we learn of people either directly or indirectly, people we know personally or people we hear of. It's very, very rarely someone that reaches out is like, I want to talk. That's happened a few times, but usually it's like, hey, you got to talk to this guy, he's got a great story. Our last episode is a wonderful example of that. Tom Underhill. Tom didn't contact us. We actually kind of had to beg Tom to come on.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but the person that told us to contact him was his platoon leader, Lieutenant Vogt, who he talks about in his episode. He saved his life, and he's like, "Hey, this guy saved my life. It was a big deal. You should talk to him. They have a lot to talk about." So we find out about these people, and then we kind of reach out to them or give them a time frame. It's like, "Hey, we'd like to do your interview sometime in the November, December time frame. What's your availability like?" And we didn't do this on purpose, but we kind of ended up with a very rigid schedules. Like we do pre-interviews on Thursdays, we do interviews on Sundays, and we release episodes on Mondays. Granted, the interviews we do on Sundays are not the ones that are released on Mondays. So we do the pre-interview, and this pre-interview process is really fascinating, especially for the people we don't already know, because you get to know this person, what their experience was like, what stories do they have hidden under this this persona.
Mhm.
And then when we launch into the actual episode, we're like, okay, we know way through this interview and guide them to the talking points. And that's kind of what happens.
Yeah. And I think that's been a really cool aspect of this too, because as you said, when we started out, we were thinking just our guys and like getting that specific deployment told. But having people on from those other eras, it's been cool to make those connections too. And
Yeah.
so even now, even just today, Curtis and I were texting in a group text with one of the former guests. Like
Hmm.
it's cool to see that we are able to forge new connections, um, with people who understand what it was like to be there. And not just that, but folks outside of that too. Like this Tuesday, we're recording with another podcast, which is rife with people who spent time in Kandahar at large,
Yep.
not just Panjwai. So that it's that's been an unseen thing about this too. Is just having some connections, and some of which have really taken off.
Yeah.
In a couple of instances where we were able to develop friendships with folks who we would never have met in 1,000 years if it hadn't been
Never.
for the podcast. So that's pretty sweet.
It is. And then so we do these interviews, and then the files and that we come off of them, everything comes from a central server. We download it, and then it's kind of like then it's kind of on me. And so I have a pretty long process, and so that I don't. This is probably not the best way to do it, but I let them build up. I get like 5 or 6 episodes built up so that I always have something to work on. Because sometimes you don't want to do the same thing. You
Mhm.
don't want to do one episode audio editing, video editing, master editing all the way through. You just get tired of the same thing and the same task. It just gets repetitive. Sometimes you can't actually listen to the episode, so there's things that you can do to edit that don't require actually playing it, like cutting up the video clips and creating scenes and doing the audio enhancements. You don't actually have to listen to do those.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you have a couple things on the way, it's like, well, I can do this on this episode, that on this episode, and you kind of just do them all different based on whatever you can do. And then eventually, it gets created. We're very obsessed with audio quality, video, whatever. But audio quality, we really want it to sound good. We're gonna do everything we can to make it sound good.
Which is why we sound better right now than we did in our first little video there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was sounding
that's a
pretty
good
rough.
observation. We definitely made, that Kickstarter campaign was incredibly successful.
Oh yeah, super.
And you guys trusted us at a very, very early stage in this process with your money and with your support. Said, hey, we trust that you're going to do good things with this. And as a result of that, that early campaign last year, as a result of the money we raised from that, we still have not had to do any major fundraising. We have the Patreon subscription program. So if any of you out there want to get the episodes early or want to get some bonus content or really just want to support us for $5 a month, you can go over there and you can support us there. But between that and merch sales, all of our own expenses. So, I've never had to dip into my own expenses. Luke's not had to dip into his. And this thing is funded for another year just because you guys continue to support us through donations and merch sales and your initial investment in this enterprise way, way, way back last year. So, I mean, and the mics and the soundboards and the stuff like that, this stuff isn't really expensive, but it was more than what we had at the time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that initial investment sight unseen, essentially, and that people were willing to just get behind the idea of the project, and that was very humbling. And I think if there's anything that's emerged from the process of making this podcast, it's been humility, because every time we turn around, it's like a nice little check to just to be humble about how this thing is even existent right now, and and that's it's a nice takeaway from a year-long process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I can't say it enough. We're humbled and very appreciative of everyone that supports us and those that have joined us along the way. I mean, not just the people that supported us through the Kickstarter, but when we concluded our Kickstarter campaign, I think we had 400 followers on Facebook, something like that.
Mm,
We're over 4,000 now. So it's a pretty significant growth for a year. I'm sure we could do better, but neither of us really like social media very much. But it just speaks volumes to the people that have heard about it and joined up along the way, and we're appreciative to everyone. Those numbers of what, again, we haven't even been live for a year. We've just been in existence for a year.
yeah.
we've only been broadcasting episodes since January. And since January, today actually, which is super fitting, I think. Today we had our 30,000 download milestone.
Nice.
So, and that's just the podcast. That's not YouTube. That's not Facebook. That's just the downloads for the podcast. That's people listening on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. 30,000 downloads. That far exceeds any expectation I ever had for this.
Yeah.
Like, for such a niche project, I think that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
And when you factor in Facebook and YouTube, that's another 20,000 views.
Yeah.
So, over 50,000 essentially is how many different times. Now, granted, some of that is me just letting it play in the background, I'll admit. especially in the early days.
Off your IP address anyway, so
right.
Only one view counts.
27,000 those downloads are from my. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We've been listened to in 45 different countries.
Wow.
We've been on the top 100 charts in iTunes. Luke has been smashed. That's funny. It's not one of the comments. We're in top 100 charts in 10 of those countries, as high as number 6 and number 27. Number 6 in Canada and number 27 in the United States in our category. Not overall. We're not Joe Rogan yet. We've published 32 episodes as of today. Russian botnet's doing work. Hush, Matt. You can't beat them, join them. Something like that. 32 episodes, 50 hours of content that we've put out in a year.
Feels like it.
It does feel like it. That's not counting the live stuff. So you add the live stuff in, it's actually quite a bit more.
And the pre-interviews.
And oh my gosh, the pre-interviews.
So, yeah.
Man, how many of those pre-interviews were 4, 5, 6 hours?
I would say that on average the pre-interviews are probably twice as long as the actual podcast.
Hands down. Unless we're in a rush, either the guest is in a rush or we're in a rush. But if we actually have the time to sit down and hang out, it's usually a 3-4 hour ordeal.
Yeah.
Which is kind of awesome.
Which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. Well, I mean, a lot of this stuff isn't really important. It's just, when some of the stuff we've already said, I wrote down notes because I'm a loser.
You're thorough.
I'm very thorough. Very. Yeah. He's a thorough man, but good.
Yeah.
It's a big Lebowski reference for you. There's a lot of numbers that I could throw around about how successful the podcast has been or how well it's done, especially, because the podcast, as a podcast professional, how competitive the podcast environment is and actually how low the threshold is for success. Talk to us about that a little bit.
So the nuts and bolts of it comes down to that there's about 2 million podcasts floating around. Out of that 2 million, basically half of them are done after 7 episodes. They call it pod burn or pod burnout. And once you get to that 1 million mark, then you're actually in the people who are actually making fairly consistent products. And if you get to the point where you're averaging 150 downloads an episode, which seems like a small threshold, but numerically it's pretty significant, 150 downloads an episode puts you in the top 20%, I think. So there's a lot of folks out there making podcasts who are just doing it for fun, throwing it into the ether, and whatever lands and whatever sticks. But once you kind of crack into that upper sphere, then there's a lot of things going on. It's consistency. It's a kind of unity of vision. I feel like a lot of folks don't have that. It's cranking them out, man. Just getting them out there, getting the stories out there, getting the I don't want to call it a product or content, but getting the narrative spun, essentially.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a threshold that you got to puncture into to get to the point where a podcast is considered something is into that world where it's, in the eyes of the podcasting side of things, a legitimate endeavor. I feel like Curtis has done a pretty good job of getting us there. I've just been here for the good looks and all the glory.
It's interesting. You look at those statistics when it's kind of a gradual climb up to like maybe the top 10%.
Yeah, very gradual.
You're a top 10% podcast if you get, I think, like 280 or 300 downloads a week, something like that.
Within the first week of the episode launching,
right?
Yeah.
But to be a top 1% podcast, that's 3,000 downloads of your first episode in its first week.
Yeah.
So the jump from and I think top 5 is like 500 or something like that, or something like that. I can't remember, but it's a pretty substantial increase to be like a top 1% of all podcasts.
Yeah.
Is quite the tangent, but the idea is, I was leading somewhere else, and that I can throw in a lot of numbers at you, which we just did. You're welcome. Now you know way more about podcast networking and marketing than you ever wanted to know. But there's certain things about this experience that aren't quantifiable, like with numbers and metrics. I can't show you a chart for these things. And kind of one of those things is the things that have been happening in the last month or so. Things that we never would have projected, never could have predicted, never would have ever anticipated. Other than the fall of Afghanistan, which we predicted on episode 1. If you want to go back and listen, we did call that. Maybe not Afghanistan so fast, but definitely Kandahar.
Yeah.
But what was really unexpected was finding ourselves in this position where we had an ability to help, and not just, in Afghanistan, we weren't really do a whole lot there except pass information along, which is lifeblood to some people. But to build up this network to where we said, hey, we want to do a fundraiser, and we want to donate to the, we can't do anything about them in Afghanistan. We don't have the resources, but what we can do is we can support the ones that do make it here. And over the course of the year, we made great relationships with all these other Instagram pages and podcasts, like the Foxhole podcast, the Boardwalk podcast, Memories of Kandahar, Memories of the Helmand, Memories of Korengal, Memories of Bagram, Op Medusa, Tools for the Toolbox podcast with Chance Burrows, who was just on our show not too long ago. All these wonderful people and their products and their passions. Everyone was like, yes, we want to do this together. And, we're going to make a $5,500 donation to World Relief Seattle next week. And that's not something that, I guess you can quantify the check, but you can't quantify the experience,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Honestly, I was thinking about that today. So I was thinking about what's the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. And for me, it's being able to it's a trifling amount of money in the large scheme of things, but it was the best that we could conjure up. But at our best, we managed to drum up a significant chunk of money to help people transition into coming here. And that's worth so much, man. That is worth more than $5,500. But that $5,500 is well spent and it's well utilized, and it's just been really that to me that's kind of the coolest thing that's come out of this whole process, is being able to develop a group of folks across a spectrum of different connections that are willing to pony up a little assistance to folks whose lives have been dramatically and drastically altered to a point that none of us could ever even comprehend. If we can make a difference in one of those people's lives, that's awesome.
Well, it's funny, like when as things started to heat up for the podcast, which was right around when Kandahar fell, and we shared that post and it got shared very wide. And then, it was Fox News, Al Jazeera, NBC, all that. We're like, there's got to be a way for us to turn this into something good. And we were having this conversation, like, we got to do something. We got to, do a coupon with the store or something like that. So to actually be able to do it and it not just be some pithy, $100 or whatever, but it to actually be a substantial donation.
Yeah.
In addition, being way more than we have ever collected in donations for the podcast.
Yeah.
Like the amount that's going to World Relief Seattle far exceeds what anybody's ever given to us. And that is really cool to me, that we were able to give back in surplus of what has been done to support us. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I thought about that too, like the amount that it took to kind of get us off the ground and create the podcast that we wanted to create with the quality that we wanted to present to folks, but to see that be turned around fourfold
Yep.
and be able to put that in the hands of some people who are doing some good stuff, very rewarding for us as the creators, but also rewarding as us, um, for folks on the back end or on the front end of that, funneling money that direction. Like it was cool. I don't know. It's ineffable. I have no words for it, but it was cool, man. It was very, very rewarding to see that all the hours, all the time, all the contacts that we developed well, really Curtis has developed in the past year, literally came to a front where we could utilize that to a very, very beneficial thing. And that was more rewarding than any of the conversations we've had, any of the things that we've produced. It was all, if it was all served as reinforcement for those folks getting hooked up with something, it's been worth it for sure.
Yeah. And kind of along the same line. I mean, there were other things that really made this worth it to me. And I wrote a bunch of stuff down. Um,
Good.
you
As you
know,
would, as prepared as you would be.
yeah.
Yeah.
These are just some things that really stood out to me this year. One is reconnecting with everyone from our 2012 deployment.
Yeah.
And not just being like, "Hey, man, how are you doing?" Like, really understand how are you doing.
Yeah.
How many times has our group chat lit up like, "Hey, man, you need to check on this guy," or "Hey,
Mhm.
has anybody talked to this person lately?" You know, people have come to visit you. They've come to visit me. We've had the chance to go, visit people together. Whereas this is a group that I had contact with before. Now I have regular daily contact with these people, and it's kind of reinvigorated that relationship. That's one thing that really really stands out to me as a reward of this process personally.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing is watching those same guys finally let go of some of this stuff.
Mm.
Um, and some of them maybe not completely. But there are a few experiences that stand out to me. One was talking with Matthew Kohler, and watching him come to terms with this, something he hadn't talked about with anybody outside of his you know therapist for 10 years.
Mm.
um, and to see him process that, both in the pre-interview and on the show. And Doc Burner was another one that
Yeah.
just really really stood out to me as someone that has been finally had the chance to get something off of his chest, and it'd be very helpful, or it seemed to be very helpful. Um,
Yeah.
those are two specific examples. I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, man. I mean, to your first point, as I've said many times in the podcast, but I'll reiterate here, when I got out, I was done. I severed ties. I burned bridges. So I didn't burn bridges, but I severed ties and I just kind of cut myself away from that fabric. And I was determined, ironically enough, to not let it become a part of my identity. And in retrospect, I realized that meant severing ties with guys that I should have stayed in contact with. But the benefit and the beauty of the podcast is that it's put us back into contact. It's put me back into contact with guys, and I'm able to have a more like matured and deeper connection post facto with a lot of the guys, to the point where we'll stay in contact with a fair amount of consistency because of what's going on here. And so I had to reapproach and reevaluate that entire part of my own personal history and come away from it better, you
Yep.
know. I've only come away from it better because of the connections that I've been able to reforge with some of our guys. So that's been pretty awesome. Um, so yeah, on the second end of that, I don't know, man. Humility. Humility is my takeaway,
Yeah.
and it's been good to it's been good to see people just kind of like offering up so much and and even just providing this small little venue for that has been very humbling.
Yeah. Um, there's there's stuff that people don't see in this process that is pretty powerful. And we keep talking about the pre ones where we talked to Matt Kohler and Eric Clark and Perez and a lot of these guys that went through some pretty horrific shit, man. Guys got blown up, got their legs blown off, like got shot.
Yeah.
And I struggled with some of that stuff. It brought a lot of stuff back up that I thought I had dealt with.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've had to walk away from editing an episode, or have had a breakdown in a freaking convenience store after doing a test listen or something. Like, it's been very beneficial for me personally to, like you said, reattack this from a different angle.
Yeah.
But this is it. I don't know. I guess I have to echo what you said about it just being a practice in humility.
Yeah.
Because we build these experiences up in our minds, like, oh man, I went out there and I just slayed motherfuckers. It's like, well, you did, or did you, or maybe you didn't. But do you remember the bad stuff? Do you remember the realism of it? Like, it wasn't just all going out and going on patrol. I mean, there were real things that happened that, like you said, are formative. And I always go back to this quote: "Those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it." Current events are just a prime example. We're watching it happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been something that's really stood out to me, and I have to be real. Doing this with you has been extra rewarding. We've always been BFFs, best buds, best of friends, but to do this project together has been super rewarding. So thanks for going on that journey with me, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely, buddy. I mean, honestly, I think for me, on a friendship level, like we were already tight to begin with because of the shit we went through.
And
But and we've been friends for years since then. But honestly, like this past year, you and I have grown closer. We've
for
been
sure.
able to become closer friends, closer brothers. And before we even started the project, we were basically on a daily communication with each other. But we were even able to step into that next threshold of not just communication, but genuine support and
Yeah.
brotherhood. That's the first time I think that I've felt the cliche of brotherhood with the guys that you
Right.
let that you went with. And so it's good to find that 10 years removed, more than just a friend but a brother. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's been really cool. um yeah, in terms of remembering, how folks remember it, my little callback to Chance Burrows when we went on his podcast. I said, "Oh, you got to remember your shoulders." Everybody
Yeah.
thinks about launching Gustavs and
Mhm.
throwing down 40 Mike, whatever. But don't forget about the pain of those straps just
Right in the middle of your,
digging into your shoulders.
or the pain, like right in the middle between your shoulder blades. Oof.
Yeah, yeah, you get that
Yeah.
little triangle of burn
Mhm.
back there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
you gotta keep yourself accountable. Um, but you know, to kind of circle back to where you started, yeah, it's been for me, it's been it's been a healing process. Um, if I can be a little selfish for a second and talk about what it's done for me as a podcast, it's really helped me to not only confront but articulate some of the experiences and the memories and everything that comes folded into that. For a long time, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, I didn't let it come to the surface. I didn't let it define me, and I'm glad that I took that route because it allowed me to become a more fuller and in my personal opinion, more interesting person, than just like the vet bro, basically. But there's a couple of small things that happened, especially in the very beginnings of recording the podcast, where I was forced to confront the reality of the memories. and the reality of what those memories meant to me and how they affected me. And those early days of confronting that have positioned me into a much better space to kind of, I don't know. I don't,
I remember that specifically, actually,
yeah.
when Matt asked you to talk about that experience, and you were
Yeah.
we had not talked about that in the pre-interview. That was not part of the plan, and I just remember being like, "Oh,
Yeah, yeah, that was kinda like a nut check, he just, like,
yeah,
punched my sack, and I was like, "Oh,
yep,
fuck." Yeah,
yep."
it
I
was
mean,
it was
I guess that's fair because we made him do the same
well,
thing,
yeah, we
but
did make him the same, but and I'm glad we got it out early because like, that
yeah,
story in episode 3, very early on, it
yeah,
was something I was dreading. I was dreading confronting that memory,
yeah,
but, now that I've confronted that in the right setting and with the right people, I would be willing to discuss that and discuss
yeah,
the ramifications of that. Um, but it was a weird moment, man. I'll have this confession here on the live stream. Um, Pretty soon after we started recording, and not long after that episode, I was flipping through some pictures, and I saw the the pictures of you after you had gotten shot in the backpack, and you were like holding out your camelback. You guys were still on patrol.
yeah,
You had like you held out your camelback and like your backpack, and there was the bullet holes in that. And this weird moment hit me where I thought, what if Curtis had been killed? And I got hit with a panic attack. And I've never had that experience ever in my life. Like I am a chill dude, man. I
yeah,
am consistent, always the same, more or less. Like I don't have those moments, but I didn't know what's going on. I was started to like hyperventilate essentially and started to cry. And I was really freaked out because I didn't have any frame of reference to understand what was happening to me,
yeah,
and I realized, like, I had a panic attack because of the memories, or the idea of the consequence of those memories,
right,
and so that was a slap in the face, that it was time to get in there, dive into that stuff, and confront it, and quit suppressing it. That's the short end of that story, I guess.
yeah. Well, I mean, and it's interesting. I've had I don't know if I've had quite as severe of a reaction since we started the podcast. I certainly did before.
Mhm.
But I've had similar moments. I described it's being in a convenience store and just being completely overwhelmed, or being in this was actually fairly recent, being in the Atlanta airport traveling for school, and then being like, I just need somewhere to sit. I need somewhere to, and like not having anywhere to go, couldn't find anywhere to get some food. All the lines were too long. I just like got super, super worked up and just like
Mhm.
came like this close to losing my shit in the middle of the airport. Um, but so I think it's healthy sometimes to let that kind of thing happen,
Yeah.
to let it run its course, because when you're in the infantry or you're in the military, like you bottle that shit, man. You're like, hey man, that sucks, but I got to deal with that later. And now that you don't have to deal with it later, sometimes it's good just to let it run its course.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I think my advice would be if you're in a position of life where you're so busy and you're so occupied with your next goals or your next objectives that you're still pushing that off, don't push it off any
yeah,
longer than you have to.
yeah,
Like get it to the forefront and let it run its course sooner than you can later.
yeah,
Because the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be to navigate that successfully.
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I think it's kind of inadvertently become a central theme of the podcast, even though earlier we're like, we don't want to be the mental health podcast. Because there's 8,000 of them doing that.
Yeah.
But it has become a central theme of our podcast. We've had several guests specifically say, hey, can I talk about mental health?
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, you can talk about mental health. And I think it's impossible to have a conversation about war in Afghanistan and not have that conversation.
Yeah.
So we'll continue to have those conversations, and we won't shy away from them. And we hope that more of our guests come on and are willing to have that talk as well. Um,
Yeah. For sure.
you mentioned the vet bros earlier, and I think we should dive deep into the whole vet bro thing. And
I have to pee though.
of course you do.
Yeah,
Well,
it wouldn't be a Panjwai Podcast without pee break.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
All right.
all right. So while Luke goes to the bathroom, as he, which you guys might actually not see this because I always edit it out of the episodes. Editing our episodes would be a lot easier if Luke's bladder was a little bit bigger, and I wouldn't have to. I could just put 3 screens up the whole time and just see all 3 of us the whole time. But unfortunately, the man has to pee sometimes. Um, so you're welcome for my editing skills for ensuring that that's not part of your Panjwai podcast experience on the regular. But going back to the vet bros. Actually, fuck that. I'll wait till he gets back. Let's take a look at the comment. Fine. John looks like he's a first-time listener. So John, welcome to the Panjwai podcast. This is not the normal format of the podcast, so I would encourage you to look up the Panjwai podcast on Spotify or Stitcher or Apple Podcast or whatever you like. You can find us. We're also on YouTube and Facebook. Obviously, you can watch the full episodes there. Kim Jong-poon, I know you're somebody that I know, but I don't know who you are. But I appreciate your YouTube persona, I guess. Fabian Sal, all the way from Japan. One of my favorite dog handlers, who happens to have my favorite military working dog. Sal, you should leave a comment and let me know how Max is doing. And Christy, my good friend Christy, who I flew many, many, many hours in the Apache helicopter with, and Luke is back. All right.
Hello.
I was able to delay while you took your pee break. All right.
Yeah.
So
That's,
the vet bros.
that's part of the live part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the vet bros. This was something that was actually kind of a factor in our decision process from beginning to end. It's like, we don't want to be that. Even though I have a beard and I wear a hat all the time, like, we really wanted to stray kind of away from that whole war story, self-aggrandizement, kind of culture. And I'll be the first to admit that Luke and I had kind of been turned off by the whole veteran culture for quite a few years.
Yes.
And it's something that I think everyone here can kind of relate to as well. Just no one wants to be that guy. Well, some people do, but that's fine, whatever. But most people don't want to be that guy. And we didn't want to be that podcast, and we didn't want to be, veteran influencers or anything like that. So, even to the extent that, with, one of our guests, Emily, back at episode 24, she was very concerned about the vet bro culture and how her appearance on the podcast would be received. And by that time, unfortunately, we had, pretty well established that wasn't a problem with our listener audience. So I want to thank you all for being, respectful and, responsible adults, and not being children in the comments as many are apt to be. But I'll tell you, my mind was changed about the majority of the veteran community in the past month. For the better, for sure. Granted, Tim Kennedys are still out there. But even with Tim Kennedy, he's getting a lot of flack, and he deserves it, every bit of it, because he's a douche. But he did go to Afghanistan to try to help. He made an effort. Maybe it was mostly for his own social media empire or whatever, but he went. He took the effort and went. So I'll give him that. But aside from him, just the kind of this grassroots effort that popped up in the veteran communities, whether it's influencers or Instagram pages or podcasts or active duty guys or veterans or whatnot, just this combining of wills and resources to try to help as many people get out of Afghanistan, not even just during the Kabul thing, but ongoing, and trying to bring people back. That has really restored a good bit of my faith in the whole
veteran community. I mean, I think on a on a philosophical level, it's indicative of where we are as a country, and that only a handful of people are making an entire, subset of the population look like idiots, and or look like self-aggrandizing, fucking jackasses. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely, I was deeply hesitant in the beginning, to the point where I even was sweating, like, if I should go as a pseudonym or something, just because I didn't like the culture around veterans, mostly perpetuated by a lot of veterans themselves. And I did, as I said a while ago, go whole semesters and people didn't know I was a veteran when I was in school. But it's funny enough, when I got out of the military, the reason I didn't want to be identified as that was because of this cultural narrative that like all veterans are crazy. And
Right.
all the veterans who went to war are like PTSD ridden
Yeah.
guys who are gonna
Ticking
flip their
time bombs.
lids and
Right.
yeah. And I wanted to very much work against that. So I refused to allow that to become the primer for my identification. The irony being, by the time we started this podcast, it was the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like I didn't want to be seen as a veteran because I didn't want to be seen as a vet bro,
Yeah.
like, oh, he's just another dude out telling his story, and like nobody really cares
Right.
outside of
Right.
the veteran community. And
Right.
but that being said, in the past month or so, with all this that's gone on in Afghanistan, it has been encouraging to see again this majority that has stepped forward and really shown their true colors.
Yeah.
That extends beyond a persona or a media fueled image of
Yeah.
what a veteran can or should be, and that's been cool.
And I'll tell you, it kind of like go a little bit beyond. It gives me a little bit of faith for America, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just that, and not in America as an identity or as a government, but as people.
Mm.
And this wasn't a whole bunch of guys like changing the profile picture or doing whatever, making empty gestures. They were doing real things, investing real money, investing real time. In some cases putting themselves in harm's way and danger. In most cases for someone they didn't even know.
Yeah.
These were guys that were shifting their entire sleep schedules so that they were awake when Afghanistan was awake and asleep when America was awake. And it's ongoing. I mean, there's always we didn't get everybody out, and we're never going to, but people haven't given up, and that to me gives me a lot of faith in veterans, veteran community, and just America, man. That there is still a group in America that's willing to roll their sleeves up and try to fix a problem instead of complain about it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. And to also see past the parameters of the time and space of the situation. Like they're willing to like I said, roll their sleeves up and solve the problem despite the shit that surrounds the problem.
Right.
Like the shit that surrounds the problem always changes and is always in flux, but the problems are more or less consistent. And to see the veteran community like just really knuckle down and get those problems solved, it's been kind of rewarding because I thought we were past that.
Yeah. Well, and you really think about it. I mean, when we went to war in Afghanistan, I'll be the first to admit I didn't feel very much empathy towards the Afghan people at that time.
Mhm.
When I'd straight out of infantry school, so I mean, everybody was a fucking target.
Yeah.
And that's how you're drilled. Like you go to war, you're like fucking kill the enemy, kill, 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 kill. Burn the village, all that kind of stuff. I mean, infantry school is violent, man, or used to be.
Yeah.
So to see like this whole generation of people like turn that switch off, and like and over time develop this incredible empathy for the Afghan people. That's, dude, the power behind that, the power to be able to turn off a switch that has literally been programmed into you,
Mm.
man, that's
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point because even like you said, even as weak ass as I'm sure infantry school was in 2009, 8,
right,
sorry, when I went in, it was still a lot of that mentality of just
right,
like kill the enemy, close within, destroy, burn the village, machete, you get
yeah,
your machete out and you're chopping the village, like all those stupid little things that you get. And which is important, to be fair,
it
to the
is,
mentality of the job. But yeah, and the fact that that's bred into an entire professional military, and importantly, the professional military that went to Afghanistan when the shit was really going on, that was bred into their mentality.
yeah,
And to come out on the back end of all those experiences of folks that were willing to um, take a more humanitarian burden, it's cool.
it is. It's not something I would have expected. I wouldn't expect
Yeah,
a generation of combat veterans to become humanitarians.
no,
It's just not something I would have predicted or expected.
yeah, 2
Um,
generations at this point.
really, 2 generations, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, and I think even the current generation, which has not really had the opportunity to experience a whole lot of warfare.
Mm-hmm.
To see even before the blast in Kabul, to see the Marines and the care that they were taking with people, and
That was beautiful.
taking care of baby, it was absolutely incredible. And this is the Gen Z that we talk so much shit about, deservedly. But it's these are young kids, and we talk so much, and every generation gets talked shit about. We get talked shit about. We talk about shit about the generation below us and above us. It's just the way things are.
Yeah, it's like that. I love that scene from True Detective when Woody Harrelson's character is talking with his father-in-law, and he's like, "Old men have always complained about the next, the next group, essentially the next generation." And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But
yeah,
I tell you, man, like those kids in Kabul last month and this past few weeks, like, holy crap! Like I would not want to be in their shoes. And the fact that most of those kids were in the fucking 4th, 5th grade when you and I were in Afghanistan. It's just astounding in the fact
mind-blowing.
that
They
they were
weren't even
there.
alive when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
Yeah.
they probably weren't even alive. Yeah, when 9/11, or they were too young to remember it. And to the 13 folks who gave their lives, man. I mean, that's just such a tragedy. But in the tragedy, there's an immense amount of beauty. There's that young Marine who had like the iconic photo of her holding the baby just a couple of days before the blast. And
Yeah.
and it was just such a moving thing to see that even after 20 years you have a generation of people and young service men and women who cared enough to be there and to do it with veracity
Pride.
and pride and timidity, and just it was, in spite of all the negativity, there was so much positive to take
Yeah.
away from it. On a personal, experiential level, there was more positive to take away from that than our 9 months in 2012.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the whole the topic of the fall of Afghanistan is going to be discussed in probably exhausting detail over the next 6 months to a year or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
definitely not going to go away. But I don't want to get too heavy on it. It's just I think it's important that we support those Marines and those soldiers as they come back, because I'll be completely honest, what they saw and experienced in a week
Yeah.
is man, I'm not even so sure there's anything that I've ever experienced that could compare to that.
Yeah.
To seeing 100,000 people trying to get onto an airplane and having to tell them no.
Yeah. And we don't need to forget those well, I call them kids now, but those 18 to 23-year-olds who were just doing their fucking job, just like we've talked about with us in Panjwai. We were just doing our job, and we don't need to forget those kids. This is a whole stringent of Marines and soldiers and NATO forces and everything that are going to need some support.
Yeah.
Because imagine what it would be like to tell a mother and her child that, no, sorry, you're a shit out of luck.
Yeah.
To be
And
a,
they had
to be
to.
a,
Yeah.
to be a, and to have to be a 19-year-old and to bear that responsibility, to have to do that. Those kids are going to need our support.
Yeah.
And then I'll second point, and then I'll quit preaching, is the Afghan people are going to need our support. Like the people that are coming here, like when the headlines forget them, I pray to God that America does not, because those are going to be people who are going to need generation old support. Their kids are going to need to be in school. They're going to need to find an income. They're going to have to pay excessive rent in a place that they can't afford to live in, working washing dishes at McDonald's. Like those people, because they can't speak English. Like they're going to need our support as a country, and we owe them that. We are obliged to that. And
it's a good point. Getting them here is not the entire journey for them.
That's not the end of it. Yeah,
it's not the end. And for everyone that was here, and I said this at the end of one of our future episodes, but I'll say it here again now. If you have a problem with the refugees coming here, I would encourage you to find the unfollow button.
Yeah.
These we made an oath to these people. They said, if you help us, we're going to help you. And we followed through on that oath. or to the extent that we were allowed to, and we need to continue to. And yes, there's going to be bad eggs in a basket for sure. But just as has been the motto of this entire war on terror, it is inappropriate and unethical to judge the entire population on the actions of a few. I mean, as a a great example, if you're a gun owner, you don't want to be judged on the inaction, on the poor actions of a few. This just translates to every group in America. When a minority does something stupid, the majority doesn't want to take credit for that. So be patient,
and
be kind, and have empathy.
There are 36 million Afghan people. That's a lot of people, and the vast majority are not Taliban. Yeah.
Definitely not even close. So, and that's another good point. We got 120,000 out. There's 39 million people in that country. Love to have gotten out, and they won't ever have a chance to do so. So, our responsibility doesn't end with the evacuation. It doesn't end with the people that come here, and it doesn't end with the people that are there right now. We still have an obligation to continue to support those people in any way that we can, without supporting the Taliban. Because let's be very clear that this is not a new Taliban. This is the same people we've been fighting for 20 years.
Same assholes. Don't let their PR fucking campaign. Assholes. Yeah.
So anyway, spinning off of the end of the war in Afghanistan, that was quite a tangent we went on right there.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, I guess. But kind of going back to the Panjwai podcast and what we've done in the last year and what we're going to be doing in the future. And I think we've mentioned it a few times. We're coming close to the end of the season. I think we've got 2 more episodes left, and then kind of like a closeout episode. And then we'll be kind of taking a break. Our first real break that we've had, well, I've had, at least, since the beginning. So we won't be.
Curtis is the brains. I'm the good looks. Just so everybody knows, Curtis gets all the praise, as he should.
That's definitely not true.
No, man. You know what? I'm gonna throw it out here for like the 6 people that are watching. Curtis. 8. Okay. Curtis has done all the work, y'all. I've just showed up and gotten all the glory, but Curtis has done all the work, and he deserves all the praise.
It's not true.
So, yeah, well, it's true, but yeah. All right, continue, sir.
Okay, yeah. So we're wrapping up the season here soon. We'll take a break from recording. So I think we're gonna have our final episode out like October 4th, something like that. Is it October 4th? That's wild. I know it's such a momentous day.
Yeah,
for us.
How appropriate. Yeah.
Maybe it's the 11th. I can't remember. But anyway, so we're gonna finish then. We're not gonna do any recording until probably November. So probably 3 weeks to a month without no recording. Then we'll start recording again, and season 3 is going to launch January 1st, just like season 1 launched. Wow. So we'll be right back at it, in January for another season of the Panjwai Podcast, and we're gonna have a lot of guests on that season. Hopefully, a good bit more than the past 2 that we've had. So we're looking forward to that, and we're starting to schedule those interviews out. We'll be reaching out to people that have contacted us in the past or people that we've contacted in the past to start setting those up. But, one thing we're kind of pretty stoked about is once we figure out how to do it, we're going to add a, video game, like streaming or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to once we figure out how to do it, Luke and I will hop on. If you got a gamer tag, we're PlayStation only because we're elitists. We're not quite PC Master Race, but we're almost there. Yeah. And so if you want to hop on and play with us, we'll do that, and we'll just kind of do like a Twitch kind of thing. See if people give a shit. If they don't, we'll just do it anyway because there's only 7 people watching this. So, Matt says boo. Matt must be PC Master Race. So I mean, as we start to plan for the next season, what kind of some things that you're interested in exploring?
It's interesting because at the end of season 1, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted out of season 2, and we got that out of season 2. Yeah, like that was very much what season 2 was. Season 3, honestly, man, I have no idea. Like I don't really know.
Yeah,
because it's expanded so far beyond us and the guys in 2012. Like I'm curious to see We got quite a few folks already lined up. But I'm curious to see what more come trickling in so we can get a more robust idea of what Panjwai will look like for more folks. So to be determined.
To be determined. I know there. I mean, some things that are on my priority list is, I'm going to throw them out here. Russell Dennison and freaking Calvin Todd, you're coming on.
Yep.
And we're gonna
100%.
formally tell the story of Throat Chop in its entirety. We're gonna tell Sergeant Swindle's story, absolutely.
Yeah.
Matt, all about the Hello Kitty Island adventure, Curtis. Okay. All right.
Don't pretend like you don't know what he's talking about.
I have no idea.
Sure.
So those are some
that's
stories.
our OnlyFans for those who are curious.
Oh, yeah. OnlyFans. Luke gets naked. Oops, spoiler alert. Anyway, where's that going? Oh, yeah, stuff we're going to talk about. Yeah. I definitely get more Canadians on, especially some Canadians that were like early on. Some stuff from like the initial invasion into Afghanistan, because a lot of that did Panjwai towards Kandahar.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff would be really cool to talk about. Then we've got. I think those are the main things I definitely want to touch on. I want to get some more stories from the 125 deployment before us and from the 138 deployment after us.
Yeah.
I think Spur One Guard is always going to be kind of like the hub of our focus. We're going to reach out, but everything's going to kind of come back to Spur One Guard at some point.
Yeah.
But definitely I want to talk to Colonel Rutherford. That'd a big one.
Nice. Yeah.
I want to talk to retired General
Abrams.
Love to have him on. So yeah, I mean we definitely have a wish list. Rusty Bradley is going to happen in season 3.
Yeah, which we. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to address it. Like we were supposed to be interviewing him right now.
Yeah.
Right now. But things being as they are, the world has kind of been turned upside down, and for a man of Rusty Bradley's skills, he's understandably busy. And also COVID restrictions with Delta variant made travel a little bit more of a pain than we initially had planned on. So all three of us decided it'd be better to kind of push it. So we're going to hopefully do that interview in January, and that'll be part of season 3.
Yes.
But we're very excited about that. We're excited to get more stories out about Medusa. So, I when I look at season 3, I think, there's going to be some, there's definitely going to be some sort of mini series for our Operation Throat Chop because it was so important to our deployment.
Yeah.
We're going to do a lot more with Operation Medusa because it's really important to a lot of people, and we want to talk to more Canadians because they're heavily invested in the area. I think beyond that, it's going to be a very long season. I think whereas these are 17, 18 episodes, I can see that one being a 20, 25 episode run.
I think so.
And get a lot more stories out. And I think having a little bit extra time to plan it on the front end will be beneficial for that. So,
yeah, for sure, it'll make it more interesting and give us a chance to bring the best guest possible that we can into the fold. So, stay tuned. See where the Panjwai Podcast goes from here. But we still got a couple more episodes of season 2 coming out.
Yeah, and they're good ones too. I mean, I think coming up this week we're talking to Russell Knight, who was a LAV driver at the very tip of the spear in Operation Medusa. It's a really good episode.
Dude, yes.
Then the week after that, we are talking to Keith Nicely, who was an Apache pilot who flew over top of me and Luke in 2012 in Panjwai.
Dark Horse.
He was part of the Dark Task Force Dark Horse, and ironically enough, he was one of my instructors in flight school.
How long did it take y'all to make that connection?
I don't think we made it while we were there.
Oh, really? Wow.
I think we could. I mean, because you don't really buddy up with your instructors in flight school.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, to some extent you might, but he wasn't my personal instructor. So the way it works is like you have you and your buddy. They call them stick buddies, and you have one instructor pilot. And so he only instructs you 2 primarily. Now, sometimes the other instructors will give you your check rides, which did happen with Keith. And sometimes if like your primary instructor is on leave or he's out of town or he's sick or whatever, then they might bounce him around a little bit. And I've gotten to fly with Keith quite a few times. But even then, it's an instruction environment. You're not really getting to know him all that well, especially if it's not your personal instructor pilot.
Right.
I think I made the connection towards the end.
Nice.
And then afterwards, I think I figured out that he actually was part of Dark Horse when I got to meet some other people.
Nice.
But he was a good dude. It was his very first class as an instructor pilot. So he was brand new. He had just graduated instructor pilot course, so he was a little fresh, a little green. And he was a good dude. He still is a good dude. It's gonna be a good episode with Keith.
Indeed.
We're
Good
hoping
stories.
I think we have one more in there. We're just hoping to lock that one down, and then we'll have kind of a finale, which will be kind of an atypical finale, and then we'll keep you up to date on that. But definitely 2, maybe 3 more episodes, and then the finale. So that's what we got looking at the rest of season 2.
Yeah, man. It's on, boys and girls.
There should be an episode dedicated to the terrible food at Mushan. Matt, I have to agree. And I think we talked about this extensively in Brett's episode.
Right. Yeah.
Man, I feel for the people that had to live in Mushan. Like, everybody wants an infantry deployment, like you want to be in the shit.
No, everybody wants to fight. They don't want the shitty living conditions.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it made me realize I did not want that. And that I was perfectly content to live at my luxury apartment in the sky at Sperwangar, and go out on shitty missions. So if I'm going to go out on shitty missions anyway, I'm going to choose a higher standard of living.
Yeah.
And so I became a helicopter pilot.
I mean, that was I think one of the things that struck me about Mushan was what I thought we were going to be living in.
Yes.
And the fight at Sperwangar is what I expected, or what I thought the fight would be like. So I'm glad that one of those did not live up to my expectations, which is to say the living conditions, because I was expecting some shitty times.
Yeah, I was. We've beaten this horse to death, but I'm gonna say it again. As a brand new private, all I knew about combat was fucking Restrepo. Walking into that schoolhouse, being like, "All right,
AC." Which AC, in our little
mattresses
Kickstarter video, man, there's some good footage from the deployment in that video.
Dude, it took me longer to make that 5-minute video than it does for me to make an entire 2-hour episode now.
I don't doubt it, man. I don't doubt it, because you had to come through hours of footage for 3 minutes of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and you'll notice, like, even episode 1 has a lot of footage and a lot of pictures and a lot of maps and stuff like that.
Yeah,
man, if anybody wants to pay me, I will do every episode like that. But holy shit, that takes a lot of time. And whew. So I apologize to our video fans that aren't getting the full experience ever since episode 1. But if you're a video editor and you'd like to take your hand at it, give me a contact. I'll let you do it. But yeah. Old Mushan. Randall asked, when is season 3 coming? January 1st, 2022 is when we'll drop that. And that will be also the 1-year anniversary of the podcast actually launching. So we'll make a big shindig out of that. We'll do a live stream then. And yeah. So
maybe then we'll have our bitchy game thing figured out.
Oh, we're going to have that figured out. How else? I don't know how else we're going to get through the winter. I did go ahead and I was able to secure it with a PS5. So
so nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I gotta allocate one myself.
Yeah. Well, I think you just gotta follow the right Twitter account, man. Follow the Panjwai Podcast for how to follow somebody else's account and get a PS5.
Yeah, right.
Oh man. Yeah, Mushan sucked. Sorry guys. The wonderful unit, got love for my 1, 2, 3 boys, but whoo.
Yeah.
You can have it.
Conditions were hot garbage.
You can have it.
And I think and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively, yeah. Because Matt was saying he lived 50 feet from the burn pit, so hot garbage.
Oh man,
that's perfect. That was probably another really neat thing about the podcast. Not to draw this thing out too long, but to hear about the living conditions at different bases during different times, or the different kind of combat experiences that units had, the different tactics one thing that blew my mind was, as far as I know, we're the only unit that went out just as like squads.
Yeah.
Like all the other units, at least in 123 and 125 and 138, they went out as platoons.
Yeah.
And they did like bounding and shit. Like we abandoned that after what, like a week?
Yeah. It didn't take long.
You know, and to each their own, that's fine. But I kind of credit our commander, Captain Kitching, with letting us be a little bit smaller, more versatile. But it was just interesting to know that, like, you know, we had so quickly thrown that out as just not working for us personally, and that they had done that the whole deployment. And I'm like, man, using like maneuvering a weapons squad on a dismounted patrol. I'm like,
yeah,
man, you guys get an A for effort. That's for sure.
Yeah, we roll pretty small. I mean, you're talking at most 12 guys, 15 guys,
12, 15 Americans on
except for the big ones.
average. Yeah. I mean, and that's, you know, I never understood that wasn't normal. You know, like, again, it was my first deployment. I was like, okay, going out as a squad is normal. This is what we do. I thought that's how everyone else did it. I thought everybody had a deployment like 2012. I was wrong.
And same for me. Like we had a fully stocked platoon in Iraq, so 2 squads would go out every night. You know, so you're talking 2 squads plus. So it's really like 20 some odd guys. So like, that's what I was used to. So it's weird to, and when things got real skinny, real tight, it was 8, 9 guys for us in Afghanistan. You know, like a legitimate, like a no shit squad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think the smallest group that we ever went out. I mean, I think we always pulled together like 12, but it would be 12 by like, hey, we're pulling somebody from headquarters, we're pulling somebody from here, we're pulling somebody from there. You know, I think one of the leanest. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said one of the leanest is probably the Heat Cat day for you.
No, I think
Or
the day
Clark.
I think Clark was probably one of our leanest missions, just because, just in overall raw numbers.
Yeah.
You know, because we only had the bare number. We had no Afghans.
Yeah.
I could count everyone who was on that mission on my 2 hands. You know, Kohler's first patrol was a full size mission. It's just that we split into 2 pieces. And so you had very small element in the rear and a very small element in the front that was all by themselves. We only had those 2 Afghan, teenagers.
That was the thing with that one. We had our two Afghan ALP, which were like 14 and 16 years old, respectively. But yeah, when Clarkie got hit, that was a very small element. No Afghans at all.
Yeah,
but
I mean
we're veering dangerously into war story
stories,
territory.
Yeah. But I mean, it just kind of goes to highlight. I mean, we definitely operated a lot more lean. You know, and mentioning the ANA, just how inconsistent that was. You know, sometimes they'd give us a platoon and they'd fight like lions. Sometimes they'd give us a squad and they wouldn't do anything. You know, and that's a whole other discussion for a whole other episode. The ANA and all the issues that there were there, and not all those were necessarily their fault, obviously. But at some point, we'll explore what the role the ANA had in the rapid fall of Afghanistan. But again, that's another podcast. Kohler's first patrol. Wow, man,
that's a bad one.
That was a hell of an introduction, man.
That was a bad one.
Yeah.
That was
thick and bushy, as you would say.
Thick and bushy. Yes. It was thick. It's very bushy. Many bullets were fired that day by both sides.
By both sides. Yep. That was one of those few ones where they didn't just give up. Eric Boyce says it sucked. Eric, well, since you're watching very closely, I'd love to know, Boyce, did that suck worse, or did getting shot in the dick suck worse? kind of curious your thoughts on that one.
Those days were kind of equanimous, except that the day that Eric got hit was prolonged.
Well, also, I would curious to know what his answer is, because the day he got shot was a much shorter day for him.
And it's true. It's a shorter day for him. Yeah.
He didn't have to walk back out. He got to go home. So, I mean, was it really that bad?
Yeah. I mean, that was like only the second or third firefight for Eric. It was, I think, like 12
2 of 12 for the day for
2 of
you. Yeah.
12 for the rest of second squad, and I only got to show up for a couple, 3 of those. So
Ugh, my
the boys
gosh,
got
man.
their shit pushed in that day. But yeah, those days are there.
Miguel Perez, that mission sucked worse than me getting shot. Boy says getting shot sucked, but I don't remember the next 2 days. So
Well,
he's
to
going
Perez,
with Heat Cat Day as being worse than the day he got shot in the dick. All right.
all right, for him.
For him and for Perez apparently. So
Well, Perez also, when Perez got taken off the battlefield, shit got fucking crazy.
yeah, that was a bad day that he got to miss out on too. He gets
Yeah.
shot in the arm. He didn't even have to walk out. He got driven back to Spurwangar. Sucking on his fentanyl lollipop.
Yeah.
Of course, and like a walk to Big Reggae was worse than that day. I mean, there was a walk to Big Reggae,
but I mean, after Perez left, it was like they turned the faucet on.
Yeah, it's true. That's actually a pretty dynamic day.
That was a bad day.
Lots of line charges and telling people to fuck off and
RPGs
kicking indoors and unnamed individuals, Spartan kicking terrorists, and shoot, that's a wild day. I was like, that was the day I think I saw the ANA fight harder than I've ever seen them fight in the entire war and terror.
100%. Yeah. I've never seen the ANA lay down Skynet like they did that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to Perez's consolence, this unnamed individual definitely broke a couple of ribs on the dude who shot you.
Yeah.
100%. Was the guy that shot you. Yeah.
Yep. Was 100% the guy that shot you, and he definitely was not breathing for about 15 seconds.
Yeah, he had
every inch of air was expelled from his lungs.
And then we don't know what happened to him after that. Who knows?
Well, I know we flexi-cuffed him and handed him off, and then that was last we saw him.
We handed him off, and that was
handed him off. Yep. Yeah. So that's a telling comment when getting shot. And this is universal for both Perez and Boyce. Getting shot was not as bad as Heat Cat Day.
Heat Cat Day was a bad day.
Awful day. I never want to experience being that fucking hot ever again.
I don't want to ever experience being that close to being fucking killed.
Well, there's that too. You about took one in the face.
Yeah. So I don't know. That fucking sucked. Tasted the acridity. I could taste the lead off the fucking round that day. It sucked.
Boy says the secret is getting an IV the night before the mission. Well, I was never given that opportunity because I didn't live in the room with the medics. So fuck you.
Yeah, I never had that privilege.
No, preemptive IV. That's pretty genius, though. I'll give you that. Oh, man.
It is really. That should be like standard. That should be SOP.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
Like how many times do we have issues with guys? I mean, and usually through no fault of their own, just being like, done. Drink every ounce of water that they have. I mean, and I'm not talking about fatties. Like not me today. I'm talking about like fit guys that were in really good shape. Just get decimated by the heat.
I tell you what, man, is the closest I ever come to really going down was I don't even think we took contact that patrol. I think it was just a rego patrol.
Heat Cat Day?
No, I didn't quite get there.
Oh, okay.
But I came close. And we went out the south gate and we went east. And we didn't go so far as to hit like the magic wood line at 500 meters. So it was a short patrol. Like we just went to like the wood line. Didn't get shot at on our way back. And I went black on water. And we got into the shade of this tree. And I like sat down and I almost blacked out. Like I almost went down. And I remember looking at Daddy Yacht. And I was like, man, you got any water? And Sarnat took his camelback hose and he stuck it out to me. And I just suckled at his camelback teat and got a little hot water into my system. And that got me up and over the hump to get back to Spimmergar. But I almost went down.
I think that was the end of the engineers mission, actually.
Was it?
I I think so. I think I remember you telling that story earlier in the season because it was after the day after the engineers were killed, and we did like that. We sat in Big Reggae pulling security, waiting for a suicide bomber to come fuck us up, and then we walked from Big Reggae back to Spurwangar.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that was
that
when,
makes sense.
yeah,
I think that's probably it.
because that was a hot day too. I remember distinctly
Yeah.
being really jealous of the dog handler because he set up like his little hooch in a tree, like with his poncho liner, and his dog are like chilling in the shade sleeping. I'm like, what the fuck, man?
I just remember going black on water. So that would actually make sense because I always carried an exceptional amount of water with me on patrol. So that makes sense that I would go black on day 3. And that is like I almost went down. I remember literally seeing like the blackness creep into my vision. I started to get that little tunnel, which I'm sure you know
Yeah.
all about.
I do know all about.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like when the tunnel closes.
Yeah. The tunnel was about right here, and then I was just like, oh. And then Sarnat was there, and he gave me a little suckle from his hose. It was a nice moment. I'll never forget that, James Ott. You probably don't listen to this, but we love you. We want you on here, even though you won't have us.
That'll be the achievement. That'll be the series finale if we can get him on.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Gosh. But yeah, for those who haven't followed the podcast or watched, I did heat cat the day that we were talking about. And it was the correct kind of heat cat to have. It wasn't where like, oh, sorry, I'm tired. Oh, sorry, I can't keep up. It was like, I kept up.
You deserved your heat cat.
And until the last second when I was like, uh-oh. And then I was unconscious.
Yeah. And then you were naked. And then you were covered in mud. And then and then you gained consciousness, and we put your body armor back on you and took you back to the trucks, which were thankfully only like 150 meters away.
They were not that far. And I think one of my favorite parts about that is we're driving back, and I'm like in and out of consciousness, and like Doc's trying to keep me awake. He's like, hey man, just think about your fiance. I was like, fuck that bitch, she cheated on me. He's like, don't think about your fiance.
Oh man. I just remember I remember all of us were there actually when we got to that wall, and I swung her back around, and fortunately for me there was like one of those random little pools of irrigation ditch water, and so I just kind of like wallered in that, and then I stuck my saw up, and I remember I was so fucking exhausted that my saw actually went into the mud, and I had to take the barrel off my saw. And I was like looking around for something to clear the barrel with. And so I think I found like a limb off a tree or something, and was clearing my barrel. And when I slapped it back on, I remember just like I was so tired to put the saw back up in case they pushed in on us to the north. And that's when I looked to the right, and you just went, and like you started to push into that muddy field because you were clearing, and you just like collapsed, man. And like you went down like a sack of hammers, dude. And I was like, oh fuck. And then fucking Holt had you naked, and Tom both had you naked and rolling you around the mud and smacking you in the face like before.
Yeah, I think they enjoyed that a little bit too much.
I think they enjoyed it a little too much. Yeah.
Especially Bally. Bally definitely enjoyed getting to smack
you in the face. Yeah.
Fucking smart ass.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been Holton.
No, it was Holton. Yeah, because it was there. I think it was Holt's first patrol.
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah.
Because he had just come to us. But yeah.
Yeah. So that was a weird day. And this, I think I remember pushing across, and I don't think it was me that was clearing, but I was fairly close to the front. And it was that cake mixture mud. Cake those batter. Irrigated fields. Ugh. And it would just cling to your boots. So your boots would have 6 inches of mud on either side. And I remember just stomping through that stuff and thinking like, I honestly don't know if I can do this. Like, can I make it out of here? And then the trucks pulled in, and like we knew we were moving back to the trucks, and I thought the trucks were going to be, a click away.
Yeah.
And they come out of the little edge of the village, and they were like 100 meters out. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like that was one of the biggest reliefs of my life. Cause I honestly didn't know if I could make it. I mean,
That's when you start saying like, I kind of want to step on one right now.
Yeah, that was very much
Yeah.
I was like, I would take the below the knee right now for
Yeah,
sure.
100%.
Yeah. It's like, but I was like, but I'm in this soup of a fucking field, so there's not gonna be one in here.
Right.
It's like I'm just gonna get fucked up. I'm gonna get shot full of fucking holes,
Right. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
And then you get home, back to the house, not home, house.
Yeah.
You walk into the semi air conditioned room and you just peel layers of clothing.
Yeah. It's like the second layer of skin. Just
Oh God. Why do people think fondly of these things?
I don't know, man.
I don't know, but we've gone down memory lane too much.
Definitely. Sorry. Sorry, everybody.
We've increased our viewership. Maybe we should tell more stories. Yeah, I think that leaves a pretty fair place to wrap it up. Again, it's been a wonderful year. We appreciate everybody who has, continued to support us, to listen to the episodes, to buy in stupid stuff like hats and shirts and koozies, which are still for sale in the store right now, by the way. All that kind of stuff. We really appreciate that. That we wouldn't keep doing this if people didn't give a shit. We would have told our stories. We would have been done. So we're going to keep doing it because you all give a shit, and this is for you. So this is for you and your family and your legacy to put on a shelf and say that's what I endured. That's what I went through. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate the support, and please keep supporting, because the support is the only thing that keeps it going. And we'll see what happens here with season 3, man. It's going to be a very interesting season. Like, I think season 3 might be our most diverse season yet.
It certainly will.
Yeah.
All right. For wasting an hour and 32 minutes and 15 seconds of your life. Have a good one.
Thank you.